Hey, Greg. Episode 1 is A New Hope, right?
No, that was episode 4.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure episode 4 was New Hope. Yeah, you got me confused. Episode 1 was with the little kid, Phantom Menace.
No, I don't think that's right, Greg.
Yeah, you got to go chronologically.
I don't know what chronologically means. What are we talking about, Greg? Oh, wait. It's episode 1 of
Latch-Key Dads
with Greg
and Tim.
This episode has been recorded in April of 2022, and in it, we look back 42 years to April of 1980. We will interview Howard Stern, Dolly Parton, and Lionel Richie.
Oh, Tim, sorry, but those interviews fell through.
Really?
Yeah, they said no.
Yeah. Well, okay. We will share some historical details about Howard Stern, Dolly Parton, and Lionel Richie, as well as other events from that month, and share some details about ourselves and our experiences back in the day.
Hey Tim, I was thinking, why don't we take a couple of minutes and introduce ourselves to our listeners?
That's a great idea, Greg. Hello, listeners. My name is Tim, and I'm excited to be starting this podcast. I was born in the 70s in rural Pennsylvania and grew up on a non-working farm with my older brother and 2 younger sisters. We enjoyed all the magic that came out of the 80s, riding our bikes everywhere, playing Atari, going to arcades, and playing with all those great toys, Transformers, G.I. Joe, Mask. And we grew up never wearing helmets, and we rarely got hurt. Well, I did have a bunch of stitches in my forehead from crashing my tricycle, and I did smash my face off our half-pipe more than a few times, and I did take a hockey stick to the face once. Well, I guess it's fair to say that I led with my face whenever I fell, but we rarely got hurt. Moving on, today I'm married with teenage boy-girl twins. It's been a while since those summers in the 80s. Over the last 2 years, I've met some new friends playing a game I never thought I would play. You guessed it, Dungeons and Dragons. During those games, we've reminisced quite a bit about the great stuff that we did and enjoyed back in the 80s. One of those guys happens to be one of my new best friends and co-host, Greg. Say, Greg, tell our listeners about you.
Sure, Tim. Hi, my name is Greg, and I was lucky enough to be born in the year 1975. I grew up in rural New Jersey and played Dungeons and Dragons back when it still scared parents. I did not wear a bike helmet and had to be home when the street lamp came on. I went to Temple University in Philadelphia and settled in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. I am married with 3 kids, a set of 17-year-old identical twin boys, and another 14-year-old son. Tim and I met as our kids are friends, and we soon discovered we like the same stuff. So one day, we both decided to make a podcast, and here we are. Hey Tim, what's happening in April of 1980?
You know, it's funny you should ask, Greg. In April of 1980, Post-it notes were introduced.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. You know, and a lot of people think that that's when they actually were created, but I was doing a little digging and I found out that in 1968, there was a scientist that was trying to create a really sticky substance and managed to make something that was mildly sticky and worked to hold pieces of paper together without making them stick so tightly that they would tear. So that was quite a few years before 1980 when they were introduced.
Wow, so it took 22 years for that to come out. Talk about, like, success through failure, right?
Yeah, that's some good math by you, by the way. Well done. And only 10 fingers, I wouldn't have got to 22 very quickly.
Well, you know, along with that is, why are they yellow? Do you know?
I don't. Why are they yellow?
Oh, I was going to...
I thought you were setting me up to set you up. Well, it's funny, you know, because I actually do know why they're yellow. I was just saying, Craig.
something to do with a yellow legal pad?
You still with us, listener? Because we're really knowledgeable
We're
about
really good
stuff
at that.
and things. So the canary yellow was not the original magical marketing guy who came in and said they should be yellow. It was actually an accident because the scientists used a scrap of yellow notepad when they were testing the glue, and that's there for a reason now. They decided that was a great color to make Post-its, and believe it or not, they are still the most popular color that people buy when they buy Post-its.
Are they really?
Yeah, pretty amazing, right?
I like the multicolor one. You know, the blue, the pink, the yellow. That way it just, so
It sounds like you, Greg.
Very cool.
Moving on, also in April of 1980, the Summer Olympics were boycotted in Moscow.
That's right.
Yeah. That's probably about the most intense real-life information that we will share on this podcast, by the way.
That's about it.
Yeah. So back to the fun stuff.
Actually, this is kind of cool. On April 21st of 1980, Howard Stern made his radio debut in Detroit, Michigan, which I thought was pretty cool to think that he's been around since, 1980. That's more math than I can figure out at this point.
Yeah, that I was 4, so definitely a listener at 4 listening to Howard. WNBC.
Yeah, and if you're not a fan of Howard Stern, I'm not sure. Even if it's give and take a little bit at a time, you gotta appreciate the humor.
Yeah, and just the longevity, and I mean, he was a trailblazer. Again, whether you love his brand of comedy or not, I mean, he definitely blazed the trail for a lot of what is out there now as far as radio personalities and the type of content, and it's pretty amazing, really.
Yeah, and I was, a big fan in the late 90s and was excited when he did transition to satellite or Sirius XM radio. At the time, it was like, wow, what is he going to do? Because now he's unfiltered. And it was pretty much the same show, just curse words.
Yeah.
That's about it.
But it's pretty amazing, though, when you think about when that transition happened. I heard a staggering number that Howard earns, ready for this, $274,725 a day.
A day?
Yeah, that'll buy some new sneaks.
I thought you were gonna say a month.
No, that's our goal, really. I think we're pretty close. We're
more listeners.
We're probably in that in that range.
Wow. That is a boatload of money.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And he's used that to be able to do amazing things, like I heard he's a brown belt in Japanese Shokondo karate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So don't pick a fight. Don't pick a fight with Howard Stern is what you're saying.
Yeah. Probably not, Although $274,725 might fall out of his pockets, as he's kicking and roundhousing.
Knock his wallet away while you're bleeding on the ground.
Yeah.
And pick it up later.
Just go for that.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Let's see. What else happened in April of 1980? It was a real turkey in terms of movies being released. So you're not looking at any great movies coming out of April 1980. 2 worthwhile ones that I found. The Gambler with Kenny Rogers. I have not seen that. I know the song.
Yeah.
Great song.
Know the song, know the name, but never saw it.
Yeah. In fact, I didn't even know it was a movie until I looked this up.
We're learning things on the fly, yeah.
And the other one is a movie that, The Watcher in the Woods, which again is, maybe I was just too young to see it, so just...
Yeah, that one I don't know the name, don't know anything about it. So there you go, listener, some not very useful information about a movie called The Watcher in the Woods.
You know what month it came out.
That's
there you
right. April of 1980, check it out. So, in addition to movies, obviously music is a big part of our entertainment lives. And back in that same April of 1980, some of the album releases were ones that my brother was very excited about. The Iron Maiden's self-titled debut album came out in April of 1980. That's a big one right there.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
A big metalhead here. At least I was in my younger days, and Iron Maiden was up there with the best. So,
yeah. And to this day, my brother's still, like, any new Iron Maiden that's out, which I didn't even know they were still putting out albums, which apparently they are. And if my brother's listening, he's enjoying it.
Yeah, it's my brother too. He's a big metal fan, and I'm sure he's checking it out. But I did see Iron Maiden in concert.
Nice.
And they were really, really good.
Yeah.
I have to say, it was a show. They came to play. They weren't, fooling around on stage or whatever. It was just awesome. And they do a lot of stage presence with that Eddie character, the creepy looking dude, and they had him come out on stage one, and then they had this huge version of him come up over the drum set and stuff.
Nice.
It was a fun concert. I was impressed as far as that goes. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, my brother, he went within the last, I'll say, 3 or 4 years, and I couldn't go with him, and so my younger sister went along with him, and I don't even know if she had ever heard any Iron Maiden music, but they're up, in the rafters, everybody's, singing along, and she's out of nowhere getting like popcorn and some other like treats, and she looks, and it's this guy that she knows from, just interacting throughout her life, and he's like sending food over to her. So she had like popcorn and like cotton candy while she's at like an Iron Maiden concert, so that was pretty wild. But anyway,
that is funny. Small world, right?
Yeah. So, in addition to Iron Maiden, The Cure put out their 17 Seconds album. My wife is a big Cure fan.
My wife as well.
Yeah. I mean, I know their music, but at 4, I know I probably had dyed my hair black and was sort of melancholy, but
nose pierced. I had no idea that The Cure had been around that long. I really thought they were more of like a mid to late 80s band. I didn't know that they were around. I wonder if that is their debut album.
I'm going to go ahead and say that I didn't do the research, but yes, it is 100% their debut album. Yeah. So it's funny, shifting in styles and genres of music. Dolly Parton put out her Dolly album, which, again, when I was younger, I mean, I knew of Dolly Parton, but I really had no idea, how amazing and intelligent she is. I mean, as a marketing just maven with the things that she's done in her career, and it's mind-boggling, really. And
a real philanthropist. She really is a good person.
Yeah.
At heart. So.
Yeah. I know she has a program for young kids to get reading material and books, and I actually, on the side, I illustrate some children's books, and we've tried to get in with Dolly. Apparently she's partnered with a pretty big publishing house that handles all that. But yeah, it's really, she's an incredible woman and done some amazing things.
She has Dollywood, which from what I understand was built really to give people jobs.
Wow. Yeah, I'd never heard that. It's amazing. Yeah.
Oh, and one more fun fact about Dolly Parton. When I was a little kid, because she was famous even way before 1980, she'd been around. When I was a little kid, I actually thought she was famous for being well endowed. I was like 6 years old.
And I mean, she marketed herself that way. And like, as a kid, you think like, she's maybe not aware of like why, whatever. And and then you realize, no, that was all like part of her marketing, herself to be popular and to use that, and it's pretty pretty wild.
Made an impression on a 6-year-old Greg.
That's true. It's true. So back to the the heavy metal. Judas Priest put out their British Steel album. Again, my brother and his friends were just so into all that kinds of music, and me being the little brother, 3 years younger, I was always whatever they were into, I was buying concert shirts with Judas Priest and Iron Maiden.
Couldn't name one song, but I was like, Judas Priest.
That's right. Yeah. So, switching over to this is one that I'm completely unaware of. I don't remember this at all, but it's X.
Apparently it's a pretty big album, Los Angeles, and I don't know much about that either, so we'll just maybe if listeners want to contact us and check and let us know about X, we'll be happy to report back.
Yeah, definitely.
Wait, we're going to leave a 5-second break here for our email address. Okay.
So switching over to the Billboard Top 100, I'm just going to rattle off a couple of these here. Blondie put out their Call Me. Pink Floyd, Another Brick in the Wall, Part 2. Christopher Cross, Ride Like the Wind. Those three right there, those all stick in my mind as songs that I just heard so many times during that. I mean, how much of it carried forward beyond, April of 1980.
Yeah.
But yeah, those songs really...
big songs.
Big songs.
Yeah.
Big songs that really, carried through, so many years beyond that,
Yeah. The Pink Floyd was kind of like an anthem as a kid when you're like, we don't need no education.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just, it was like, oh, I'm such a rebel. Yeah.
Whenever we had pudding after dinner, we were all like, you can't eat your pudding if you don't eat your meat. Yeah. So, after that, there's a few other songs that Billy Preston and
Michael Jackson.
Yeah, Michael Jackson, that was a big one, Off the Wall. Yeah, I mean, it's funny, my dad loved Michael Jackson, Billy Ocean, a lot of that, stuff that came out of the Commodores and things like that.
Yeah. Lionel Richie.
Yeah. Oh, Lionel was key. I mean, my dad played Lionel Richie so much, and then to this day, I still love Lionel Richie. I could listen to it anytime.
We got to fade in some Lionel Richie here because it's good stuff right there.
Yeah, it's funny, and I mean, to Lionel's credit, I mean, he's still, his music, it probably isn't as popular as it once was, but his persona and what he's done on.
I don't know.
He's
what
a
is
judge.
Tim thinking?
I was waiting there for Lionel to talk, and he seems to have stepped out. He's not at his mic, but
he's a judge.
Yeah, he's a judge on American Idol.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's I think it's him and Katy Perry and a country singer maybe.
Oh, okay.
And so it's fun to see Lionel kind of back in the limelight.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Once the rude British guy was gone, I was kind of like, all right, he's not going to make fun of anybody. Then I'm going to check out. Yeah. I did hear something, funny thing about Michael Jackson and Off the Wall, and I'd have to double check this, but I remember in 1992, I was in high school when Michael Jackson came out with Black or White. I don't know if you remember that song.
Yeah.
And that hit #1 on the charts. And at the time, this was early 90s, Michael Jackson was the first person to have a #1 hit in 4 decades. The 60s, 70s, 80s, and then that was his first #1 hit in the 90s. I don't think he had a #1 hit in the 2000s, but
yeah, I wouldn't know, but yeah, that's amazing. I mean, when you think of he had such an amazing, career as far as, like all of his accomplishments and, just the moonwalk alone. I mean,
any guy who can wear a sequin-studded glove and get away with it is pretty cool.
Yeah. It is funny. I still am prone to moonwalking out of a room just for no reason whatsoever. Just look at my kids, look at my wife, and then moonwalk out of the room.
It's a great way to set an exit. Right?
100%. On April 26th, 1980, the longest jump by a jet boat is set at 120 feet.
Sounds far, but it's not really that far, Tim. I mean, it's not that long of a distance. Color me unimpressed, but I think someone would have accidentally jumped a boat longer than 120 feet. You would think someone would have smashed this record. It's been 42 years. However, our crack investigation team spent 5 minutes on Google, and it appears that is still the record.
Oh, man, it's crazy. It's funny, though, how much that era of the 80s was all about stunts, and it kind of got me thinking how that was so much a big part of a kid's life in the 80s, and conversely, how my kid's childhood was relatively stunt free. I was digging through some of the bins of stuff that my mom had given me, from all the stuff I had when I was a kid, and it all lives in my garage now. And I found a program from a stunt show that my parents took my brother and I to sometime around 1980, and it was called the Jack Cockman's Hell Drivers.
Great name.
Great name.
Great name.
And it had all kinds of crazy, dangerous car and motorcycle stunts, 28 in all, according to the program. One of which was called the Autobats, which was basically acrobats that were standing on top of a car while they did stunts. And also Happy the Clown, which that alone, just seeing the picture of this clown is enough to scare the bejesus out of anybody. But yeah, and all of those stunts, it was all done in just regular street cars that they put some extra paint on. And oh my gosh, thinking about that though, did you and your brother ever do any kind of crazy stunts when you guys were kids?
Well, never with a car. Well, I'm not going to say never with a car. That'll be for another time. But we used to do like some stunts with a riding lawnmower.
That alone, you don't have to say any more.
Right? It was me and a friend in high school, and what we would do is we would take a bunch of golf balls and throw them all over his backyard. And I would drive the club cadet, and he would sit perched on the hood with a golf club. And I'm sure you can imagine what we were doing. We were doing a little polo, and so I'd gun the lawnmower, and he'd start swinging, trying to see how many of the golf balls he could whack. And this one time his backswing was a little bit too much a backswing, and he went ass over teacups off the hood of the club cadet, and those turning radiuses really weren't very good. And I tried to turn out of the way, but then I felt the bump as the back tires went over his legs. But he walked it off. He was okay.
Yeah, like a good product of the 80s. Yeah. You just rub some dirt on it and you'll be
Keep
fine.
Going.
It's so funny. And, conversely, when I think about, my own kids, and the closest thing that they've ever done, remotely close to, like a stunt spectacular show or something like that, is Monster Jam. You ever taken your kids to see Monster Jam?
No, I've never taken the kids to see something like that. That sounds so much fun, though.
Yeah, it was. I mean, all things considered, it was a blast, but it's funny, like, even the protection level, like, when we were kids, we would go, and, like, it didn't matter how loud anything was. We all just sat there, and your ears would ring for days after, but
no big deal.
Like, we all had to buy these, same kind of, cans we've got on right now to protect our ears, for all the kids, but the show itself, I mean, it's in an arena, and man, when they crank over those engines in the monster trucks, I mean, it is like ear splitting loud, But yeah, when we were kids, it was just like, all just sat there, and it is what it is,
Yeah.
So, but one crazy, what I'll put in the category of crazy, adventure we took with our kids is we went to see a demolition derby. Cool. Which in a little town outside of where we are, it's called Charlottesville. Which,
nah,
you don't have to say anything else.
You're
right?
making that up.
Charlottesville. They have an old-fashioned demolition derby. It's crazy. It's just tons of exhaust and fires, and the French fries are unbelievable. I mean, that alone is reason to go.
Cooked in lard.
Oh
right?
yeah, 100%. But the funniest part of going to see the demolition derby was the parking situation. It's kind of an interesting story. Would you like to hear it, Greg?
Heck yeah.
All right. So, we go to park, you're in a field, and, they just start, waving you in, and they're parking cars, head to toe, 2 lines. We get out, we go in, we enjoy the demolition derby. It's starting to get late for us, for our kids, they have to be in bed by 8 o'clock kind of thing. Meanwhile, the demolition derby is nowhere near being over, going to run till 11, 12 o'clock at night. But we decide, okay, the kids have had enough. We're gonna take them home, and we get out to the car and notice that they have now parked these 2 rows of cars into not 2 parallel lines, but a triangle. So at one end is a bunch of cars that there's no way you can get between, and at the other end is a fence. So, we managed to disassemble a bit of the fence and get out of there.
Well, wait. There's a little more to this story than that. What do you mean disassembled the fence?
Well, I took my truck and I spun it around and put the rear end towards the fence and demolition derbied my way out of the parking lot.
You were inspired.
Yeah. Footnote on that story, I actually just went over and it was a split rail fence and took out a couple of the rails, and my wife drove the car through, and then I put the fence back together, and no harm, no foul.
You're a good guy, man. You put the fence back when you were done. That's pretty good.
Yeah. So it is funny, though. I mean, even, obviously the types of events we would go to and things like that were all very stunt-driven and intense, but even the toys, from back then, it was all about, crashing and smashing.
Evil
and jumps.
Knievel.
Yeah, 100%, and one of the toys that I found in one of these bins that my mom gave me is the Dukes of Hazzard stunt track, and some of the bullet points on it are really kind of funny. It's it shifts into second speed.
Whoa. Two speeds.
Two speeds, right? It's pretty awesome. It charges up the ramp, which, it's, a lot there, right?
That's
charging
up the ramp. I don't know what that means, but it's impressive.
It does jump long distances, which made me wonder, is it possible that this old toy could jump 126 feet and beat that record of the...
I think it probably could.
Actually, it was 180 feet. But yeah, there were so many, toys and everything, and that, when we were kids, I mean, everything we did was sort of in that same vein of like, what can we jump over? What board can we lean against another board and ride a bike over, and, all that kind of great stuff. But it did make me think of my first bike. It was a department store bike. Well, let me back up. My first bike were hand-me-down bikes from my brother. And then eventually I graduated to my own new bike. Yeah. And that was a big deal. It was called the Golden Eagle.
Whoa, that's
pretty amazing,
fancy.
Right? It was all black with like gold stickers and everything. And
nice.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. Do you remember your first bike?
I remember having a blue Huffy. And I did, like you, I had the hand-me-downs for a while, but I think the blue Huffy was my first dirt bike. And, how much did you love your first dirt bike? I can still feel the handlebar grips, like the rubber, ends on it. Like, it was the most important thing when I was, 12 years old, was my bike.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, we'd get home from school and it was like we just would ride our bikes and we'd ride our bikes some more, and then we'd get flashlights and we'd hold them on the handlebars. Yeah. Biking was such a big part of us. And,
it was. Yeah.
It was funny. We in the whole theme of stunts and things like that, riding wheelies was that was the thing. For a couple summers it seemed like that was all we did. Was there was this telephone pole in front of our house. And so that was the starting point. We'd ride around a little loop. We'd come up to the telephone pole and then pop that wheelie and just see how long we could go. And I mean, it was funny. Like in the beginning, I'm the little kid. I'm 3 years younger. If I could even get the wheel off the ground, that was a big accomplishment.
Yeah. And
then over the course of, I don't know if it was a summer or two, we could ride wheelies I'd have to think it was 200, 300 feet, something like that.
Wow, that's impressive.
And, that was, I mean, it was so fun until, of course, my neighbor's cousin shows up and lands on his knees and bloodies him up, and that's it. No more wheelies.
No more wheelies. Ruined it for everybody, right? Well, what we always look for when we were kids is looking for those construction sites with those huge piles of dirt that could be 20 or 30 feet high, and oh man, when we found one of those, it was game on. Not only did we ride our bikes, but you had a dirt wars. We had to pick up the clumps of dirt. But I remember the top of those dirt mounds where you would just go kamikaze, head straight, head down on your bike, and you just you'd pray you didn't hit something on the way down and go blasting off on the side of it. It was so much fun.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I mean, me growing up, in the fields of Pennsylvania, it was what can we, how can we dig this pile of dirt higher, or, run over corn stalks, or, whatever it was. I mean, it was a blast. And, it's always fun to just be out on a bike and jumping and crashing. And,
yeah. I remember we would had I lived in a very little tiny town in the middle of nowhere, and so we were surrounded by nothing really, except for this little town, and we had this one little convenience store. And so it was just so, like, when you got your bike and your parents, because it was on a highway, when they like were like, okay, you can ride on 571, and, and you'd go to there and you'd bring your like $1 and get like, a pack of Garbage Pail Kids or gum or base, whatever you want, from the store, and you just felt so cool.
Oh yeah,
to be able to do that. It was awesome.
Yeah, unfortunately where I was at, there just wasn't anything around until, I don't know, I'd say probably when I was about 14. There was a little farm store that opened up, and it was a solid 2 or 3 miles from the house. And
that's a hike.
The older kids, they'd get on their mini bikes and they'd rip through the cornfields all the way down, and I'd be standing there and like, Mom, can I go? And I was never really, it never really, by the time I was old enough to do it, they were over it. They were driving and everything, and so never really got to experience the fun experiences of the farm store.
But yeah, it was good times. I mean, your bike was just it. It was it took you everywhere. And God forbid your bike would break or something. You'd have to you always had one though, right? You had like an old one you could rely on and stuff. But And I remember like around 13 or 14 is when mountain bikes became a big thing. And oh look, I can shift. The one kid like, I got a 3-gear shift, and then the next kid came out, I got a 10, and it was it was still the mountain bike, and you're like, I'm sitting there on my Huffy like, yeah, okay.
Well, I think probably around the same time was when the BMX freestyle bikes came out.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a friend of my brother's, he had gotten like the top of the line GT, had the fold down pegs in the front, pegs in the back. He had the full, gyro on the handlebars, so you could go all the way around. And I remember he decided he was done with it, and he was selling it. And like I was pleading with my dad, and it's like, Dad, can you go halves with me, please? Can you go halves? And I don't know, it was probably $120 or something. So I'm like scraping together all my, birthday money and, all that to buy this
couch
bike.
chain.
And I think in the end, like there was like certain things he didn't want to sell, so I had to buy like like the seat. Like my own seat. Like I think the crank. I don't think it came with a crank. I had to buy my own crank for it. But in the end, I mean, I still have the bike. It's hanging in my garage.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah, it's the old GT Performer. Yeah.
Oh, that's slick.
Yeah, I love that bike. I still have it.
Do you ever let your son Jack or your daughter Nora ride it?
It's funny. Probably 4 years ago, I got it out of the rafters. I'm like, oh, this is going to be awesome. They're going to love it.
Yeah.
And it had these tires on them that had the GT logo in the tire, and they were white. And I was like, very proud of these when I was a kid, because I'd gotten these really cool tires. And of course, they were dry rotted so bad that Jack made it like, maybe 50 feet down the road, and the rubber's just like flaking off in chunks like it's mud as these tires are just disintegrating. So, we obviously went out and bought some new, just regular old black, tires. And he rode it a little bit, but it's, it's old, it's creaky, it's not as fun as the new, mountain bike he has and stuff. So.
Yeah. It's funny, and that's kind of one of the themes that we'll probably talk about, is just what we feel as our generation was so important and so necessary. The next generation's like, whatever, Dad.
Well, and it's all for better or worse. There's so many things that compete with that stuff now. I mean, we're both sitting here with phones in our pocket that you can see anything and everything, and yet we were kids. If somebody had a transistor radio, you're like, oh man,
let's go awesome. Ride our bikes somewhere and listen to the radio.
Yeah. And if you knew somebody that was like super rich who had the little micro television with the antenna on it that you could see, like nothing, just static maybe. But, the idea of a pocket, TV was amazing. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And now it's like, it's second nature. Everybody's got a pocket television.
Whatever, Dad.
Yeah. So, Greg, I was thinking at the end of the episode, it'd be fun to go back and give ourselves a report card and fact check anything that we may have said incorrectly throughout the episode.
That's a really good idea. Just, we're just talking off the cuff here. We could have made a mistake.
Yeah. So, in the theme of that, I did go back and check my statement about The Cure. I said that was their first album, even though I didn't actually check it, and I said that. But in reality, that was their second album. 17 Seconds was the second album, and the Three Imaginary Boys was from 1979, and that was their first first album.
Oh, okay. Good to know. And I think at one point you had talked about the Dukes of Hazzard jumping 180 feet and breaking that speedboat jump, when in fact it was 120 feet, lest anybody think that a speedboat jumped 180 feet. It's only 120.
Good catch. Another thing that I said was that the judges on American Idol were Lionel Richie, Katy Perry, and a country singer. And I didn't know his name, and I didn't say it, so I want to correct that. Let Luke Bryan know that we know he's a judge, and we won't make that mistake again.
Our favorite judge.
Yeah.
And I made the error in saying Michael Jackson had hits across 4 decades, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and that's really only partially true. He had solo hits in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, but his hits in the 60s were part of the Jackson 5. So those technically are not solo hits, but close enough.
Yeah, good catch.
Thank you. So as we wrap up, we'd actually have to ask anybody if they have any questions to feel free to email us. Do you want to give them our email address?
Yeah, I think it's a good time in the report card to do that, since we mentioned it earlier in the episode and never give you the opportunity to know what that email address is. So anyone who does want to email us, it's dads@latchkeydads.com. Feel free to email us, and we'll be happy to respond sometimes.
When we get there.
Or all the time.
All the time.
Feel free to email us, and we'll get back to you.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned. We'll be back again soon.
Tim, did you know that listeners should like, review, and subscribe to the Latch-Key Dads podcast?
No. But now I know.
No,
No, he's at the bottom.